Good morning and welcome. I'm Kathy Deligianis, a member of the governing board here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston, and also your current treasurer. We're so glad you're with us on this sunny but cold morning. No matter how old or how young you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, however you identify, and whomever you love, please know you are welcome here. I have a couple of announcements this morning. First of all, please join us after worship today for an HVAC Task Force update meeting, which will take place during the virtual Greet Your Neighbor coffee hour. The task force has been working very hard and has identified a contractor and a solution for our ventilation issues. Please join us to learn about the solution and ask any questions you may have. If you can't attend today, there will be another meeting this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m., also on Zoom. You can check your email for more details. The UUCR annual meeting will be held next Sunday, February 27th, on Zoom after the church service. Meeting notice letters were sent this past week to all members. The primary purpose of this meeting is the election of new board officers, board members, leadership council members, and nominating committee members. In addition, we will review progress on the new HVAC system and vote on additional required funding. Members are asked to attend as a quorum is needed. Detailed information is available on our website, uureston.org/election. Today's service is being led by Sterling Pilette. Sterling joined UUCR in 2004. He's a longtime member of the worship committee and has led many worship services here at our church. He's also part of the membership committee and has enjoyed welcoming new members in social gatherings on his floating dock on Lake Anne. We're very pleased to have Sterling leading us today, and his sermon is titled, "Was Jesus a Socialist?" We are also joined this morning by Cynthia Young, our music director, Linda Weaver, our director of religious education, and Jesse Leong, our accompanist. David Nemi is serving as worship associate, and Kayla Williams is the chat usher. Ron Bracey, Maggie Mack, David Nemi, and Amelia Turner are running the technical side of worship. Thank you all for participating in today's worship service. Now let us center ourselves for worship. And before we hear the prelude this morning, we have a special presentation from our music committee.
Good morning. We are so happy to have here with us today one of our newer church members, Jeff Lower. You may have noticed Jeff playing percussion in some of our services this year, or perhaps you saw him performing in our fall music cabaret last October. Jeff is a wonderful musician, and he has jumped right into doing lots of volunteering for the music program, and we are very blessed to have him as part of our congregation. You will be hearing Jeff playing during our postlude today, but he is here representing this year's music committee, and he has something special to share with you.
Thank you, Cynthia. On January 9th, our sanctuary piano was dedicated. And today, on behalf of the music committee, I present this plaque, which will be hung in the sanctuary to commemorate this milestone. Let me read what is inscribed. Our sanctuary piano was made possible by generous donations from 74 members and friends of this church, and with the leadership of Claire Say, who dedicates this piano to her parents, Ann Ung and Kelvin S. Say, and to her dear friend, Denny Shaw. In loving memory, January 9th, 2022. And the poem, Making Music, we have found a new dimension in the world of sound as worship moved us to a more profound Alleluia. Thank you, members and friends, for this wonderful instrument. And now we get to enjoy hearing our beautiful piano, played by Jesse, as he performs our prelude, a two-part invention by Johann Sebastian Bach.
Good morning. Good morning. That's better. I'm Sterling Pilette. Welcome to our church. The opening words are by Andre Moll. It is in the form of a blessing, which was written in honor of two Unitarians, Martha and Waitstill Sharp, who during World War II dared to risk their own comfort to share in the lives of others in an uncommon, caring way. When you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, and when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other because of our shared humanity and because of our differences, that is where holy gratitude begins.
Our opening hymn this morning is number 38, Morning Has Broken. The words will be in your chat box, so we hope you will sing along with me and Jesse. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Today's chalice lighting words come to us from Catherine Esty. Little flame, light the tender kindling of our souls, and soon a roaring blaze shall be of warmth and love and community. From this little spark, may a fire of passion spread from heart to heart, and light our way, sweet spirit, and light our way.
In our church, we recommit to each other every Sunday by singing our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this church. We will sing along with our congregation and choir virtual video. The words are in the video. If you are visiting us this morning for the first time, please accept this song as our blessing to you.
Love is the spirit of this church, and who have tried to make that so by creating their own towns and now cooperative homes where everyone tries to live by their shared values. One of these people was Aidan Ballou, and this story is based on one by Elisa Davy Perriman. When Aidan was a boy, he heard a story from the Christian Bible that made him think about how people treat one another. In this story, Jesus says, if someone slaps you on one cheek, peacefully turn and offer the other cheek, so that they will know that you won't hurt them and that you aren't angry with them. Jesus also said, if someone takes your coat, give them your shirt also. And Jesus taught about caring for one another and especially taking care of people who are poor and who were treated unkindly. Well, some of these ideas confused Aidan. He thought, well, if someone hurts me, I want to hurt them back. And I've been taught that if someone steals, they should go to jail. But he kept on thinking about these ideas from Jesus' teachings. And as he grew, he noticed that when people fought or when people were punished, that usually didn't solve a problem, and it often didn't make the person more peaceful. So he decided that he would live by these ideas. And he became a Universalist minister and then a Unitarian minister, and he talked about these ideas, these teachings from Jesus. But when he was 37 years old, he decided that it wasn't enough just to talk about these ideas and to live this way by himself. He decided he wanted to live in a town full of people who were trying to live in this way. So, with a group of friends, he bought some land near Milford, Massachusetts, and formed the Hopedale community. The people who moved there were very strict about not hurting other people, and they opened their doors to people who needed a meal or a place to stay. They invited people who had escaped from slavery to come and settle in Hopedale, and they opened a boarding school where many children could come to live and learn. One of the children living in the Hopedale community was Lizzie. When she was about 8 years old, a man came to Hopedale saying he was sick and hungry. The people gave him dinner and medicine, and he said he was going. That night, Lizzie heard a sound downstairs in her house. She woke up her parents, and they went downstairs to check it out. In the light of the lantern that they were carrying, they saw 2 feet sticking out from under their sofa, and next to it was a bag full of things like candlesticks and dishes that the person was trying to steal. Lizzie's parents sent her to get Aidan Ballou and some of the neighbors, and when they got there, they lifted up the sofa and found the man they had fed earlier that day. Lizzie's father asked him what he was doing, and he said, I just lost my job, I have no family, I have no home. I was hoping that if I stole things from you, you'd put me in jail and then I'd be fed there. Well, the people of Hopedale told him, you don't need to steal or go to jail. Stay here and we will make sure that you have food, a job, and a place to live. And that's what the man decided to do, and he never stole anything again. The people of the Hopedale community had put their faith into action, and they point us towards a better way of loving and caring for one another.
Now is the time when we invite you to share your joys and concerns. so no one has to hold them alone. You may wish to light a real or virtual candle in your home to mark what is in your heart, as we light the candles in our bowl here in the sanctuary. If you would like to share in chat, please write to all attendees, and do remember that what you write is public. We invite you now to read each other's joys and concerns and enter then into a time of meditation and prayer. Please join with us in a spirit of meditation and prayer. We are so grateful for this time, this moment of quiet, to touch peace within ourselves and be in blessed community. May we feel the power of our strength together, our love together. We hold in our hearts each other's concerns, all of those who are struggling, and those who need our care. And we take a moment as well to give thanks for the many blessings, the joys, big and small, of this beautiful life. For birthdays, for family, and for these cold, windy February days that will lead us soon into spring. We hold with care and love all the joys and concerns that were shared here and those that remain in our hearts as well. Amen and blessed be. We are pleased this morning to share with you a stewardship testimonial from Catherine Hoagland. Catherine has been a member of UUCR for 5 years. She is Puerto Rican, originally from the Bronx, and has lived in Reston now for 10 years. We are grateful to Catherine for sharing her thoughts about what makes UUCR so special to her and her family.
In the slide and in the chat box. This donation is separate from your pledge payment and helps support the running of our church, which includes paying our staff, paying our mortgage, our utilities, and other expenses. Thank you for your generosity and your support of our beloved spiritual home. Please look for the link in the chat box and in the upcoming slide.
Thank you, Jesse. That was beautiful. I think one of the most beautiful songs in our hymnal is hymn number 1043, Shekei Al-Dash. The hymn puts two melodies together. The first is a Transylvanian blessing, Shekei Al-Dash, which means Shekei blessing. Shekei is the name of a Hungarian minority group living in Transylvania, a region of Romania where the roots of our Unitarian faith date back to the 16th century. You will first hear the Shekei blessing sung in Hungarian by our lovely soloist, Megan Pitluck-Schmidt. Next, you will hear the counter melody, which is the same words sung in English by yet another beautiful soloist from your UUCR choir, Lena McCalla-Miles. Then the two melodies are magically put together. Thank you to our wonderful choir for recording this song for us, Shekei Al-Dash.
Oh
The title to today's sermon is, Was Jesus a Socialist? As though I had to remind you, certainly this is not a common title for a sermon, but I thought it was one that needed to be addressed. Because frankly, I'm a little bit alarmed by what I've seen on social media. I invite you now to hear me and my reasons for giving this sermon. Now, more than ever, the word socialism has been pilloried in the media by evangelical and religious right Christians associating it negatively with liberals and Democrats. Televangelist Franklin Graham criticized President Joe Biden's job plan recently, saying that the Democrats are bringing on socialism to America. John Horvat of the conservative Christian organization Return to Order explains, either we are a God-centered nation or we sink irreparably into secularism and socialism. He continues with how socialists will usher in a new hell on earth and how the socialist mentality is incompatible with Christianity. The president of conservative Hillsdale College, Larry Arnn, said that increasing numbers of young Americans are being drawn to socialism and other ideas destructive to liberty. Ideas such as Marxism, with an urgency as though Marxism is about to take over America. Not to be outdone, Turning Point USA's America Fest conference recently with Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Donald Trump Jr. featured titles such as How Culturists Hijacked America, as though it's already happened. And then we have the Reverend Edward Meeks, pastor at Christ the King Church in Towson, who said, President Biden would lead the nation into socialism, a soul-robbing ideology that always and inevitably leads to totalitarianism, where the government presumes to put itself in place of God. Okay, do you want any more examples? You have just heard some notable quotes linking socialism, secularism, etc., with Democrats. What is the importance of all this? Well, because these Christian leaders, who many, by the way, are multimillionaires, are Trumpers and represent a huge voter bloc, and their thrashing of Democrats could have an outsized effect on the outcome of the next elections, unless something is done about it. This should get our attention. My reaction to this is, if these Christian leaders actually understood the teachings of the historical Jesus, should they be howling against socialism? I believe they may be giving false information out with the intention to mislead. And by the way, this is the definition of Google for misinformation, giving out information knowing unknowingly or deliberately to deceive. Misinformation is one of the major problems we have in our public discourse today that is threatening our democracy. Jesus warned about false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. I think in today's jargon that could mean beware of hucksters and con artists. He continued, Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. However, even after this warning, these Christian leaders influenced their followers and were a major force to get Mr. Trump elected in the last election. Will you please bear with me as I explore how Jesus' disciples and followers lived in the early years after his crucifixion? According to the Gospel of John and the book of Acts, the early Jesus followers lived a life of communal living, reflecting their common faith and common values of Jesus' original teachings. Everyone was accepted and treated with compassion. Everything was shared. Men and women had equal status. No one was poor. The owners of farms and houses sold them and brought the proceeds to be distributed to members according to their need. For example, a Levite from Cyprus, Joseph by name, but renamed Barnabas, was the lord of an estate. He literally sold it and brought the profit to the group. The egalitarianism and injunctions against personal wealth led the first Christian communities to a form of living reflecting the common purse maintained by the followers of Jesus, and as I said, in communal style living. This apparently was the Jesus way to live. To me, this communal style living emulates a primitive form of the basic elements of what today we call socialism. Actually, it could be called by some other names, but I'm not going to go there right now. I'm going to keep things simple and just stick with the word socialism. Applying these communal style living arrangements of the early Jesus communities to modern day has often been called an impossible dream. But is it? Some people living today have lived up to this dream. Eastern monks, the Franciscans, the Shakers, worker priests, Benedictine monks, communes like Jonah House, a real-life secular commune called Twin Oaks in the southern part of Virginia. I know about Twin Oaks because I briefly lived there in my younger days. Communes and religious orders place the community ahead of the individual. A member does not have access. The principle is from each according to their skills, to each according to their needs. So therefore, it is not that such living conditions are impossible today. It is that people make the conscious decision to not live the Jesus way. I point this out because it exposes the hypocrisy of the evangelicals and religious right who decide not to live the Jesus way, and yet will criticize it. They have the right to do that, but they should be called out as hypocrites when they publicly criticize socialism when in fact the Jesus way was socialistic. To further build my case, I will continue with the Sermon on the Mount, which is considered to contain the central tenets of Christian discipleship. In addition to loving your neighbor as yourself, the thrust of Jesus' teachings is that the poor, the underprivileged, the sick, the different, the infirm, the meek, the cast-outs should not be overlooked, but welcomed into what Martin Luther King Jr. called the beloved community. And I might add at this time, this is what certain Unitarian Universalist principles are all about. The first, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The second, working for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The third, acceptance and spiritual growth. The parable Jesus told in Matthew 25 illustrates Jesus' intention convincingly. Those who refuse to treat the hungry, the stranger, the sick, and in prison as they would Jesus himself are told, "Depart from me, you who are accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." Whether that curse is metaphorical or not, it gets our attention. This requires Christians to ask, how should I act if every human being I encounter, everyone I admire and everyone I disdain, everyone I agree with and everyone I disagree with, everyone I love and everyone I hate, were actually the presence of Jesus in our midst? No one can live in this manner at every moment, but it is an ideal that should give Christians pause to contemplate, to be humbled by the implications. Sweeping this message under the rug by the Christian right is an indictment and needs to be made visible and corrected. Reza Aslan, author and religious scholar, traces the historical roots of Jesus as a revolutionary figure in his book, Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth. According to Aslan, there's one thing you can really zero in on when it comes to Jesus' preachings, and that was his absolute hatred of wealth. Aslan goes on to say, this wasn't a man who was neutral about it. His preaching wasn't that the rich and the poor should meet in the middle. No. What he preached was that those who have wealth, that wealth will be taken away. To say Jesus those who are poor, they shall be the inheritors of the earth. To say Jesus distrusted the rich would be an understatement. Remember this catchphrase we all know, it's easier for the camel to walk through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. You knew that, right? Let's be honest. Jesus saw the world in terms of class struggle. These teachings are socialistic. There's always been a deep divide between large Christian institutions that are bastions of the status quo and the revolutionary promise of Christian spirituality, best exemplified in the socialistic ways of living practiced by the earliest Christians. Jesus' teachings were deeply resisted by religious authorities while he was alive, precisely because the idea of radical love that sits at the foundation of Christianity is an affront to organized religion. It certainly was an affront to the religious authorities during Jesus' time and is an affront still today. Organized religion is typically more concerned with questions of power and authority than the idea of radical love. Trumpism appears to me to be a direct negation of the way Christians are supposed to live, with the radical idea that every addict and homeless person you might encounter on a nighttime walk in New York City is the presence of Jesus in disguise. Religious institutions are well known for local volunteerism and worldwide humanitarianism. While this is wonderful and commendable and helps many people, it will never correct the overwhelming social and civil injustices. It does not provide for the needed structural reform of the kind that provides real solutions to social and civil injustices as homelessness, income inequality, housing disparities, racial discrimination, poverty. The real solutions, the ones that beg for rebuilding and structural reform, come under the heading of a form of socialism called democratic socialism. Yes, democratic socialism. So what really is democratic socialism? Well, the term has been successfully undermined and or canceled in today's society. A search at Google says democratic socialism is an economic system that focuses on establishing FDR New Deal-style federal social welfare programs. These programs would be paid for largely by increasing taxes on corporations and the wealthy. All this would be done to reduce large class and income disparities, but all within our current capitalist and democratic society. Yes, let me repeat that. All of this would be done within our current capitalist and democratic society. Democratic socialists do not support centralized planning and total control by the federal government, which is what most people have been propagandized to think of when they think of the word socialism. That extreme form of socialism has been shown to not succeed, and leads to failing states such as what is happening in Venezuela. Democratic socialism is achieved within our nation's democratic process through peaceful social movements and electoral participation, hence the use of the term democratic. Democratic socialism uses the power of Congress, government regulations, tax law, and labor unions to make the government more accountable to the public interest. Beginning in the early 20th century and continuing since, Americans have turned to the federal government to rein in the excesses of unrestricted capitalism. Why? Without proper regulation, unrestricted capitalism amasses staggering fortunes for some, while the common man and workers are invariably exploited. The old FDR New Deal programs, which are democratic socialists, were enacted in the last century to address these problems. The antitrust laws, union contracts, the 40-hour work week, child labor laws, sick leave, vacation leave, the Civil Rights Act, safe food and drug laws, public schools, most municipal fire, police, and water departments, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, Medicare and Medicaid. And I'll end with the most popular program in the country, And what is that? You know what that is. The most popular program in the country, Social Security. How many people today would be willing to give up any of these programs? And yet most people appear to have no idea these are democratic socialist programs. Remember the lady complaining she did not want the government messing with her Medicare? Doesn't that say something about the messaging in this country and who is in control of it? Democratic socialist programs that are now being considered by Congress would seek to address injustices of systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, the denial of health care, homelessness, universal pre-kindergarten, voter suppression, and they would provide dental benefits for seniors, expanded child tax credit, paid family medical leave, lowering the cost of prescription drug prices, programs like that. You get the picture. If Jesus were alive today, I do not know how he would infuse his democratic socialist-style teachings into our modern complicated world. But I'm sure he would approve of the democratic socialist programs that currently exist in our society today. Without these programs, you and I would be plunged into a world we would find medieval. On the other hand, if Jesus were alive today, I'm sure he would not be comfortable with capitalist socialism for the rich. Wall Street bailouts, huge tax breaks for Fortune 500 corporations, corporations that in many cases don't pay any taxes at all, and tax incentives to the richest people in the world, including multi-millionaire televangelists. I believe I've made my point about the hypocrisy between what these Christian leaders put out there and how that runs counter to the Jesus way. Why is this important? Again, because we need to expose this. These people are influencing a sizable segment of the American populace with the grave result that the American experiment, as we know it, might be in danger of being overturned by an authoritarian monster in the next presidential election. Their followers will not go out of their way to research this kind of misinformation. But I believe that if they are shown the hypocrisy of this, many will come around. We need to gently confront our evangelical and Christian friends and family, not in a berating manner, but in an open, friendly manner. That in this case, that some of their leaders are not following the Jesus way. The stakes are too high to do this, not to do this. Democracy is on the ropes in future elections. Please share these thoughts, and if possible, with others, including free use of this sermon on YouTube. And please let me know how I can help. Now, to answer the question posed by this sermon, was Jesus a socialist? What do you think I'm going to say? Yes. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you knew that. I consider Jesus a socialist, but a particular kind of socialist, a democratic socialist. And are there any success stories of democratic socialism in real-world governments today? Well, quickly, let's look at the modern countries like the Scandinavian democracies. They consistently rank among the world's most democratic, most egalitarian, healthiest, most prosperous, most environmentally responsible, most highly educated, and most crime-free countries in the world. Are they unsurpassable utopias? No. And this is an important point I'm going to make. They combine the wealth and opportunity generated by capitalism, but with the ideals of democratic socialism at their core. And I will repeat this, at their core, these countries are capitalist, which generates the wealth for the governments to redistribute where needed for the people. Their socialist policies deliver a better life for all than is available under a strictly capitalist society. In countries like Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, you don't see middle income and poor people forego health care because it costs too much. You don't see thousands of homeless people finding shelter under freeway passes or in tent villages in the woods. These countries have a commitment to their people and to profit making. Capitalism is the best system for generating the wealth and opportunity, but it must be properly regulated. The political far right in this country has effectively canceled use of the term democratic socialism on the nationalist stage. You barely hear about it if you do. This term has been co-opted as a form of misinformation, but the crime here is that it takes attention away from programs that can really help people. I believe certain Christian leaders spread this misinformation in a cynical way that undermines Jesus' socialistic teachings. And again, I believe we need to expose this hypocrisy to what these Christian leaders promulgate, and that runs counter to what we have been calling the Jesus way. Do I need to repeat this again? No, I don't think so. You got it, right? There is a spark of hope, though, for evangelicals. It has come to my attention recently that Mark Babberton, president of the Evangelical Fuller Theological Seminary, is quoted in a New York Times article in February of this year, written by David Brooks, that has a bearing on our discussion. The article is called "Dissenters Trying to Save Evangelicalism from Itself." Mr. Brooks says that many of the seminarians at Fuller are moving away from their brand of the evangelical church as to what it has become. Get this, these evangelical seminarians want to build communities that are smaller, more intimate, more authentic, in which gatherings can often fit in a living room. They see faith as inseparably linked to community service with the poor and marginalized. There's a general interest in these seminarians in getting away from the bitterness that they think has devoured their evangelical leaders. Can you believe this? The seminarians want to go back to what it looks like, of all things, we have been calling the Jesus way. Wow. Let's hope their fledgling movement in that seminary is successful. We here, individually and collectively, in this religious community now, have found our faith in the UU principles, and they support the principles of democratic socialism and the Jesus way, as I have discussed here. In fact, we have been known to go out into the streets to march to support these principles. Let us be grateful for what we have. Let us be grateful that we have the opportunity to fight for what is right and relish in the achievement to help the common man. In their sermon, Bending the Arc of the Moral Universe, our Reverend Scott Alexander and Reverend Julie Price said America has a great deal of hard work to do before it achieves its national ideal for equal opportunity and justice for all. I repeat their closing words when they said, at this critical juncture of our history, let us reflect together on the urgent work that lies ahead. Amen, and let it be so.
Thank you, Sterling. Our closing hymn today is hymn number 276, O Young and Fearless Prophet. The words will be in your chat box. Well, please rise at home as you are willing or able and sing along with me and Jesse.
To make our
Inspired by our UU principles, we are a vibrant, intentionally diverse congregation that models and promotes, both locally and globally, love, spiritual growth, service, right relations, and sustainable living. We embrace the beloved community that integrate these teachings and call us to action in today's world. The spiritual and economic basis of Jesus' doctrine of brotherhood and love cannot be denied. The spread of lies and misinformation, wherever it occurs, must be called out and made known to all. There are ways to fight back, and this is one of them. As UUs, we are part of that movement to call out truth. May we go out into the world with such a spirit of brotherly love and influence it with these noble goals to the best of our ability.
Thank you. That was wonderful. As a reminder, we hope you will join us now for our HVAC update meeting during the virtual Greet Your Neighbor coffee hour. Come learn about the HVAC solution for our ventilation issues. Bring your coffee and tea and your questions. The meeting will be held in the coffee hour Zoom link, which will be shown in the upcoming slide and also in the chat box. Also, please use the chat box as a virtual receiving line to leave a message about your appreciation for the service. And enjoy the rest of this sunny but cold day. Thank you so much for joining us.